Welcome back to Real Estate Mindset. Today's video is going to be absolutely bonkers. Now, the data is in and the government continues to print money at a pace that's completely unprecedented. In fact, they're spending more money in deficit than the great financial crisis. And if you're wondering, how can prices keep going up? How is it not crashing yet? Remember, you guys, when the government prints money, that money is kicked back into our economy. And when it's kicked back into our economy, that money is spent. And all of these wars that are being fought and all of these incentives that they're passing and all this legislation, you guys, remember who has to pay for that? Americans have to pay for that, you guys. And the Federal Reserve is printing so much money right now, and the government is spending so much money right now that it is killing the American citizen consumer. And today we're going to take a look at just how bad and reckless the government deficit spending actually is. And I'm going to paint you guys a true picture on GDP versus deficit. And we're going to look back to 2021 to current, and we're going to see, would we be in recession already if it wasn't for the deficit spending? Now, that question is easy to answer if you've been following along with me, because you know that the entire economy would collapse and fall apart, and we would have our reset in prices, and consumers would be better off and the balance would be closer. But instead of that, you guys, the rich just get richer and the corrupt just get more corrupt. But you guys can never forget, I'm not a financial advisor, even though my bio is as a loan officer of over 20 years. I know real estate financing very, very well. Also as a realtor of about 14 years. You guys, I know how to play that comp game and that appraisal game and that value game like no one's business, but also a CE licensed instructor. I've taught real estate to agents, consumers, and loan officers for the last 5 years. I got to tell you something, I love it, but it doesn't pay very well. And my bio is also as someone that had a bankruptcy, repo, foreclosure, and tax lien, and I ruined my life during the GFC, and I don't want that to happen to you. So if you like this bio, help me out, help my channel grow, and like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and whatever you do, don't get offended by me asking you to like the video. We'll take a look at an ABC News article titled 2024 Federal Budget Deficit Projection Rises to Nearly $2 trillion. Okay, so again, for this year, for this fiscal year, they're now saying the deficit is going to be $2 trillion. Now, real quick, before I dig into that article, I just wanted to go back in time and I just wanted to show you guys what the deficit was during the great financial crisis. First of all, in 2008, the deficit was only 0.45 trillion. Okay, in 2009, really the worst of it, 1.42 trillion. So what that article says is we're going to hit 2 trillion this year. Again, you guys, during the great financial crisis, really horrible time in American history, the deficit was less than what it is now. And yet these headlines are saying the labor market's great, the economy is great, everything is growing. But I'm going to show you that the only reason it appears that way is because these giant bars right here, and these giant bars right here represents how much government deficit spending has been going on over the last few years. Look at that. We'll get back to that. And I hope you guys like this article. It's got some really interesting facts. In a new projection from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, the federal budget, the gap between how much revenue the government makes versus how much they spend, or rather when we teach our children, well, actually people don't do that anymore, but it's called balancing a checkbook. Okay, I was taught how to balance a checkbook when I was a child. I'm pretty sure children are not being taught that, but in other words, they're spending more money than they have. Okay, the government, it's so smart, right? There's all these college experts, and yet they can't spend what they have. They got to spend what they don't have. And who pays for it once again? Who pays for it, guys? Comment below. Who pays for this? You and I. Don't forget. Nevertheless, they're saying it's going to be 1.9 trillion for the 2024 fiscal year. And remember, the fiscal year does not start in January. The fiscal year starts in October. The deficit forecast is $400 billion higher than the CBO's last estimate in February. Jeez Louise. I mean, they're off to a horrible start this year. An increase of a whopping 27%. The reckless spending is just un-American. The CBO cites a handful of reasons, including recent legislation to provide $95 billion in aid to Ukraine, Israel and the Indo-Pacific region, which Congress passed in April after months of delay, increasing Medicaid spending and $70 billion attributed to the 2023 bank failures because of slower than expected recovery of payments by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. So $70 billion. First of all, let's think about this. So that $70 billion that they're saying, again, that you and I paid back was a result of the bank failures back in March of 2023. And remember what preventing those bank failures did to the economy. It kicked in more inflation into the system, and it stopped a contagion of bank failures from happening. During that period of time in the US, we had active deflation going on, especially in the housing market. And when I say active deflation, I'm saying prices are going down, not disinflation. Disinflation is the slowing of inflation. Deflation is prices going down. We had that happening. But as taxpayers, okay, we elected officials that said these banks are more important than you, but you don't get any say in saving them or not, and you have to pay for it all. And they kicked the can down the road, and we're partially in the situation we're in now because they bailed out the banks in 2023. That makes me so furious, guys, so furious. Let's go back into this. Another factor in the projection increase was President Joe Biden's student loan policies. So on top of banks being saved that had Oprah Winfrey's money, did she need saving? I don't think so. On top of that, we're in this situation because these kids get free school now. Did you guys pay off your school loans? Any viewers pay off your school loans? Do you think this is fair? Comment below. I'm going to read this paragraph, though. Another factor, again, is Joe Biden's student loan policies, including canceling loans, adjusting loan balances, and implementing a new repayment plan that offers more subsidies to borrowers. The policies have added $145 billion to the deficit. I mean, what are we teaching kids these days? We're teaching kids, this is what we're teaching kids, to get into debt no matter what. It's okay to get into debt, get in as much debt as you can, make as much money as possible, be part of the system, play the system, and if you lose, just go bankrupt and start it all over again. Am I wrong? Is that not what they're saying? Get in debt, it's okay. And guess what? If you don't file bankruptcy or you can't file bankruptcy, the government is going to eventually come in and save you. Isn't that what they're teaching kids? Man, this article is making me upset a little bit. Biden has so far canceled $167 billion in loans for a whopping 4.75 million voters. Borrowers. With a plan on the way to increase the reach to nearly 30 million borrowers in total. That is a lot more. Pretty sure they're going to run on that. The debt relief is mostly focused on people who were already enrolled in repayment plans that pledged eventual debt forgiveness, like income-driven repayment plans that offer relief after 20 to 25 years of payment, or the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which offers relief after 10 years. Interesting. What about my mortgage? Can we have a program where if I pay my mortgage for 10 years, it can go away? Can we, is that what's next? We pay our mortgage for 5 years on time, or we're late for 5 years and it goes away? I'm serious. Is that what's next? Both programs were poorly coordinated and often left people unable to access their debt relief at the end of their payment plans. About $119 billion of total debt relief has so far targeted those two programs. The administration has made the case that the debt relief could boost short-term consumer spending and have positive effects on borrowers' homeownership and entrepreneurship capabilities. So act like the debt's not there. Act like you didn't borrow the money. Act like you didn't use that money to achieve your goals. Act like you didn't spend it. But you did. You did spend that money. You did buy things like with that money. Now, this is going on. Other elements that have increased the deficit over the past few months include higher interest rates, which makes it more expensive for the government to pay its debts. The amount of money that America is paying towards its debts right now is astronomical. That's why it's so important to only spend what you have. When you spend what you don't have, that's how you get in trouble. But I guess since they could just print money, it's okay, right? No, it's wrong. That's not okay because we citizens pay for it. And there's a looming 2024 election issue at play too. the continuing impact of the 2017 Trump tax cut legislation, which has added trillions to the deficit. If former President Trump wins office, he says he will extend the legislation, which the CBO predicted could end up costing about $5 trillion over 10 years. The White House sought to hone in on tax legislation to explain the deficit increase, particularly at the 2025 expiration date for the legislation years. After the prior administration added $8 trillion in debt, new CBO numbers show that the Trump tax windfalls for billionaires and corporations continue to come at the expense of the American people by driving up deficits. With debt growing out of control, we need leadership now more than ever. And I'm going to add, we also need consumers to get smarter now more than ever. In other words, no more reckless spending. I know you got to spend on certain things, but no more reckless spending. This should be domestic issue number one in the presidential election. It's time for President Biden and Trump to put forward plans to fix our freaking debt, because it is absolutely killing us as American citizens. I'm struggling and I'm doing everything I can to save money, and I'm struggling. If we can't save money, we're living paycheck to paycheck. If you're making $250,000, if you're making $100,000 and you cannot save money month to month, guess what? You're in the group of people living paycheck to paycheck. And that doesn't have to be you. But again, you guys, it's so important right now to fix our living situation, our spending situation, our reckless spending habits, because we still have time to do that. When a recession hits and nobody can get a job, that's going to be a lot harder to get ahead. Right now, get ahead. All you have to do to get ahead right now is not be part of the rat race, not be part of the herd. That's all. That's all you have to do. Once you're not part of the herd, you can make decisions to save money, to invest intelligently, to curve the way you're spending. You guys, if you're not saving money, do something about it right now. Now, let's see what happens when we remove the deficit spending, and let's see if GDP goes up. All right, guys, so let's look at 2021 first. So 2021 is right here. You guys can see that the T's, I can't, no one can comprehend this number, by the way. No one can. But in 2021 alone, and let me just, before I continue, remember in the GFC in 2009, really horrible, bad, super duper bad recession, right? Horrible, 1.42 trillion in deficit. See, right there, 2009, okay? But in 2021, I'm not going 2020 because that was lockdown. In 2021, we had $2.7 trillion in deficit spending. That's almost double the GFC. Now, let me show you GDP growth. Okay, so again, deficit spending in 2021 was 2.77 trillion. All right, so for 2021, we had a 10.7% increase in GDP for a total of, 2.25 trillion. So let me get this straight. In 2021, the deficit was 2.7 trillion and GDP growth was 2.2 trillion. So let me ask you guys, if it wasn't for the deficit spending, would we have gone into recession in 2021? Now, 2022 did have growth when I removed the deficit, but when we go to 2023, it didn't. So look here, guys, in 2023, again, we're supposed to have this great economy. We can't have a great economy when the deficit is this big and the deficit is going up. It's not, you guys, it's not going down. The deficit is going up. Even the year-to-date fiscal deficit is going up. Everything is going up. This is so bad. But anyways, the deficit for 2023 was 1.7 trillion. So 1.7 trillion deficit. Now, as you guys can see here, the increase for GDP in 2023 was a 6.3% increase, or 1.61 trillion, which again, just like 2021, is less than the actual deficit, which means, and I'm going to ask you again, in 2023, this is just last year, if it wasn't for all that government deficit spending, wouldn't we already be in recession? So I want to ask you, do you think the number one issue, the number one problem with unaffordability around America, do you think that lies in the hands of the consumers and reckless spending habits? Because that's certainly something that is powerful and very important and is a huge problem in society. But do you think the biggest issue here with the unaffordability is how the Fed and the government, Congress, spends and prints our tax dollars? Do you guys think that's a real issue here? Now, they keep saying, oh, no one can replace the dollar. No one can replace the dollar. I get it. But I'm not talking about the rest of the world. I'm talking about home. I'm talking about America. I'm talking about the US. And what's happening right now, you guys? What I see is happening is these people are killing the American dream of home ownership. That's what I see. Let me know what you see. And other than that, I really hope you guys got some new value, insights, and perspective. And if you're out there investing in real estate, you guys already know I wish you luck and I hope you win.